Hello, and welcome to the Knowing Show. I am your host, Christene Marie. Y'all, I'm excited for this conversation tonight. Over the last 3 days, I've just been neck deep in my book, Knowing, and in the final stages of editing. And one of the things, honestly, that we've really been leaning into on the show or in the book was a lot around this topic. Why do we not use our gifts, and why do we play small? And we talk a lot on the show around vertical alignment and around this concept of actually living where I am oriented with the proper hierarchy of priority, the proper hierarchy of honor in terms of who has a greater say in my life, whose voice am I listening to, who has the ability to have an impact on me and really influence the direction of my life. And so, with this concept of vertical alignment, it is bringing my beliefs, my behaviors, my mindsets, every part of me into alignment vertically under first my ideal. That's kind of the first thing that I need to consider of who do I even want to be. And then, chiefly, it is, well, who was I created to be in the first place? What is my innate nature of my gifts, my talents, the thing that makes me unique, that I have the responsibility to offer to the world? And so, as we look at this vertical alignment, then we can look outward in terms of horizontal alignment. What does this look like to actually bring this full, whole vertical self to now the world horizontally around me, to the right and to the left, and then see what do other people need, and how do the unique gifts and the unique elements about who I am, how does that translate out into the world around me? Yet so often we're starting with the reverse. We're starting by looking outward, seeing what other people need, and then we're reacting rather than living proactively in accordance and in alignment with what actually is the thing that, man, we really shine in this way. And man, I really have a passion and a heart for this particular topic. And then we wonder why we run ourselves ragged and we feel like we're constantly giving from a place of depletion. I was speaking with my coach the other day, and she asked me, Christene, as you're finishing your book and as you're kind of building out a whole bunch of different things for Knowing, which is my passion and I just love so much. We've been doing this show every single day for over a year now. And I find that there's so much opportunity for us to really kind of create a movement here because, man, I feel so strongly, like in my bones, that emotional health, emotional intelligence, emotional healing needs to come about in people's lives, in families, in businesses. I was just 2 weeks ago or 3 weeks ago, I was sitting with a business and we were talking and analyzing about how their leadership team needs to come together and actually have a healthy foundation on an emotional, relational level that will then get them to become $100 million organization. And we were analyzing the relational organizational structure, not just the business structure. So as we're having these conversations, my coach asked me, what out of all of these things that you do, both in your personal life, in your professional life, and kind of almost, it's not a nonprofit Knowing, but it's functioning that way in so many ways. And so she said, what out of all of the things that you're doing is actually life-giving to you? Because the thing that's really unique around identifying the vertical alignment is that there's a lot of things we can do kind of in an extraneous way where it's like, oh, I could do that, I could do this, but what is the thing? It's like the unique intersection where I am so vertically aligned. That is, I am gifted, I love it, it is life-giving to me, and it translates out well into the horizontal world. And that really is the sweet spot. That is where we find ourselves being a light in the rooms, in the businesses, in the communities in which we find ourselves. And man, we are actually restored by way of giving. And that is kind of what it is that we're looking for in so many ways when we talk about using our gifts and actually walking in our calling. It is something that is life-giving to me. I actually leave better because of this rather than more depleted, having given everything away, and now I'm running on empty. Now I'm running on fumes. So this whole question of, well, how do we use our gifts? We need to actually first ask the question of, well, what even are they? And then we can consider, how do I use it and why am I afraid to use them in the first place? So as we kind of lean into that first piece of this whole conversation, I want to remind us of how we talk about identity here on the show. We talk about identity in two parts. Part A is the universal aspect of you and me. And frankly, it's the thing that really binds us together in a really beautiful way. It's the part of us that is, we are loved, we belong, we are chosen, we are fearfully and wonderfully made. We are made in the image of God. We belong, and we are fundamentally, intrinsically, regardless of what we do, we intrinsically matter, should we so choose to believe that and live accordingly. That is kind of the capital T truth of our identity. And that's part A. Part B is where this conversation really comes into play, which is, what are your unique gifts? What are the things that really light you up? What are the unique capabilities and skill sets, and even your own unique story? Just yesterday, I had a gentleman, Dustin, on the show, and he was talking about how so often we can find and kind of stumble into our calling and the very thing which we're here to do by way of identifying, well, what was wrong that I actually needed to solve for myself? And now that's something that I can offer the world. And so so often the purpose is found in the problem that we solve for ourselves, or even in the pain that we found ourselves in. And so if we want to kind of work backwards and reverse engineer, we can look at what's going well now, and how did that stem from a problem in our previous lives, in our past. Or we can identify, okay, what's a problem now, and how could I potentially solve that for others? And here's the thing that's so interesting. When we're talking about using our gifts, it doesn't always mean that there's going to be monetary value on the other side of that. When we're talking about key performance indicators in business, we talk at KPIs. When we're talking about what is an indicator of success, so often people talk about monetary gain. And that's how the world functions on a fiat currency, and that's how it is. At the same time, there's many other areas and ways that we measure success for things that maybe are heart-led, or maybe they have more to do with relationships, or maybe they have more to do with real impact in other countries. And so now we're measuring our success, and our key performance indicator actually doesn't have so much to do with the monetary gain, but maybe it has more so to do with it could be community impact. It could be even enhancing children's reading levels. Whatever it is that your heart gets stirred over, then we have to ask, okay, if that's something that I'm passionate about, that was a previous problem, that was a previous pain, and therefore I'm finding purpose in solving that, not just for myself, but for those around me. So, okay, what is that area of passion? Again, it's the accumulation of the passion or pain or problem that lends to the purpose, and that's usually where our passion lies. And then also, well, how do I measure whether that is something that's making an impact, or that really is deriving success? So how do I define success for that particular passion? And then it's, okay, well, is there actually an opportunity for me to connect the vertical with the horizontal? Is this something that depletes my energy, or is it something that is kind of a reciprocal relationship where I actually am gaining as I give? And that's the ideal. You know, when you think about Tony Robbins, and you look at these John Maxwell, and you look at these people who are going out on stages, that takes a lot of energy. But man, if that's something that actually energizes them in return, that's, by every level of analysis, a win-win. Hundreds of thousands of people have been changed and transformed, whereas they're getting energy, and they're actually getting their own, it's almost like they're hooked up to an electrical socket, and they're getting energy as a result of other people coming in, and now it's a real fit. So that's what we're looking for. So what are the gifts? What really is unique to you? Where does your passion lie? What gets you motivated and gets you kind of out of bed in the morning? Is there a mission? Is there a topic? Is there even a crisis that, man, you just can't stop thinking about? Is there a problem in the world? Maybe the problem that you're addressing, or the pain that you're addressing and solving for, doesn't actually have to do with you. Maybe it is something more so on a global scale. Maybe you truly have an advocate's heart. So identifying those aspects, the passion and the gifts, what does success look like in that particular regard? And then, well, okay, does it actually bring me life? Is it truly an area that energizes me so that I don't just end up depleted every day? And then as we look at this, then we can identify, okay, well then why am I afraid? Why am I afraid to walk in that? Why am I afraid to use the very gifts that have been given to me? That's the concept of a gift, is that it has been given to us. So in fact, if I want to be a good steward, and this again, harkening back to that conversation with Dustin yesterday, if I want to be a good steward of that which I have received, and if I want more of it, well, am I being faithful with it now? That concept of faithfulness is so, 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 so important. That concept of really honoring that which has been given me. Am I going to go and multiply it? Am I going to go and take that and invest it and then yield more? Or am I going to hide it? Am I going to be afraid to use it? Am I going to live in fear because of maybe even the grandeur of this gift? Y'all, you and me and so many of us have been given something that probably feels bigger than we could handle. It actually might even be terrifying to us. Maybe it's a big dream. Maybe it is a real passion around that problem or that pain. And therefore your purpose is so big and your passion's even bigger. Maybe the metrics of success don't add up and you're like, well, I don't see how I could get financial benefit from this. Frankly, I haven't made a single dime off of doing this show every single day for over a year. But if that goal is the goal, making money, well, then I'm going to be sorely disappointed. And if my goal is I want to have hundreds of thousands of viewers, I'm also going to be disappointed. We have to know what success means for you and me. Otherwise, we are going to constantly be looking to the right and to the left to everybody around us to measure our success rather than vertical of like, you know what? I know I'm called to this. This is the stirring and passion in my own heart, in my own soul. I was created for a purpose or for a time such as this. And I now get to use the gifts coupled with the passion. And then I'm going to test a whole bunch of different things and I don't even know where it's going to end up. But man, it's so important that as we're looking at kind of combining the gifts with the passion, we have to ask that question of what energizes me? Where do I end up feeling fulfilled while I give for the longevity of the mission? Because otherwise we will burn out. There's no way we will continue and be able to maintain, not just continue on the pathway of our mission, but be able to maintain the relationships with those around us and have proper prioritization and honor our families and honor our businesses and honor our employees. Something's going to give if we are not restoring our souls on a regular basis. And what better way to do that than to expend our energy in something that gives us back energy in return? Before we continue, I just want to jump over here in the chat. Good evening, friends. Thank you all so much for joining. Thousand Air. Oh, I'm so glad to see you. I love this. The magic of thinking big. Let's go. Brian, I'm so glad to see you. Good evening, my friend. F Car, hello. Good to see you, Ryan. Thanks for joining, Eder. Hello. Sadine, thank you. Thank you for joining. Goose Hunter, I'm glad you're here. Hello, Preston. Good to see you. Sholin, hello. Ryan. Chiliar, hello. Lacoy, hello. Sam. Said Boxes, hello. Hello from Paris. Paris is beautiful. I am, hello. Andre, using our gifts to create impact in our families and communities. You know what I love, Andre? That word that you just put in there, using our gifts to create. Y'all, we need to be operating so much more from a creator's mindset of, okay, I'm showing up in my normal day-to-day. How am I going to create in this environment? Even going in, you said communities and families. Going to a family gathering, how am I going to create a memory or create joy or create a conversation that is meaningful and life-giving? The more we actually sit in the creator's chair, we actually get to, dare I say, co-create with the vision that God has for the family or the vision that God has for your life. And truly, this isn't some religious conversation. This has everything to do with our purpose and why we're here. Just before I got on the show, I saw a news report about a woman who has 2 kids. They're under 10 years old. And she was shot and killed by her husband, who then turned the gun on himself. And she was a beautiful young woman around my age. And, I'm looking at that and I'm like, my gosh, if that something like that happened to me, what do I have to show for my life? And y'all, I think that this is something really important for us to consider. What are we creating? How much time are we taking every single day to create versus simply consume? And sometimes, like we've talked about this before, sometimes our consumption is actually the fuel to then have creation. Sometimes the consumption is for the edification and the restoration of our soul. So consuming is not a bad thing. But when we're looking at the percentage of time and investment in, okay, what is the return on my investment for consumption and what is the return on my investment for creation? Looking at this is so important because creation so often has to do with this very conversation around why are we afraid to use our gifts? Well, could we in fact be afraid to create because, well, the creation process is messy. The creation process is unreliable. We don't really know what's going to happen on the other side of it. It's in essence vulnerable. The process of creation. In fact, Brene Brown does leadership. What do you call it? Leadership training. She wrote a book called Daring Greatly that I read a couple years ago, and that was so eye-opening for me. And she talks about the vulnerability of creation and why it is so important for businesses, for governments, for whoever the organization is, to foster psychological safety for the purpose of creation. But here's the thing. If we have not created that kind of safety for and in and of ourselves, we will never dare to create anything because we'll just meet ourselves with judgment. And y'all, I'm speaking to myself here. I have a sketch pad and I would love to be able to draw and paint. And I have a set of paints. Both of them have been sitting literally for years. And so even as I'm talking, I'm like, okay, now I've got to go do it. But it feels really vulnerable to create in that way for me because I'm already judging what I'm doing. Like without even sitting down to do it, I'm already telling myself I'm bad at this. So it's so relevant to this conversation around using our gifts. Because if we're using our gifts and this might even be the question, why are we using our gifts? Are we using it to prove something? Are we using it as a source of maybe showcasing our identity? Like how much of our gifts are actually wrapped up in our identity, right? If somebody's really good at soccer or really good at basketball or really good at painting or drawing, how much of that is actually truly a gift that we have received that then we are giving away to others? So that, in the giving away, we end up receiving, because that's a big part of this. It's that kind of that water wheel effect. In the giving, if it's life-giving for us, then we receive. And if it's something that is motivated by selfish ambition, I think we're going to know that, So I actually am not free to create around painting, drawing, because I have judgment looming in the back of my mind, and therefore I am not actually able to create. Now I'm risking just becoming a carbon copy of every other artist out there because I don't actually have the real vulnerability to sit in that to create something of origin. But if we're able to allow for gifts to flow through us, setting aside judgment and just being curious about the process, curious about the very act of doing the thing because we believe in either the outcome or we believe in the why. I'm doing this not for myself, but I'm doing it for others. When I started doing my show, my gosh, it was messy, and it still is. I'm not coming on here with a full agenda and a script and all that. But y'all, this is the thing. If we know our mission, if we know the passion that is the accumulation of the pain or the problem that ultimately is lending to our purpose and that overflows into our passion, if we know why we're doing it, what does success mean for me? So success in this regard, using this example of painting or drawing, maybe success is I just sat down and I did it. And I'm going to do it 100 times of something messy and very imperfect. And I'm simply going to create for the process of it. So if we know what success means and we've identified that, and then we have a clear why, I actually have a feeling my why would be for the sake of joy. I actually have a feeling that if I can get out of my own way, I think I'm actually really going to enjoy that. And it's going to foster that right hemisphere of the brain. That right hemisphere of the brain needs to be tended to and be sparked. And so to sit down with a blank sheet, it's like, what's going to come out? I don't know. And so to allow for the pure and kind of unfiltered processing of the right hemisphere of the brain, we do that with the left all the time. We're talking and communicating and writing emails and consuming podcasts that stimulate that part of our brain. We don't really have much that like massages the right hemisphere. So this act of creation is so important. So Andre, I love that comment there. Thank you so much. That was so good. Doctor, hello. Explorer, good to see you. My Willie, hello. From Mississippi. Oh, I'm so glad you're here, Mark. Thanks for joining. Michael, hello. Oh, basically a dumpster. I love this. I just printed out flyers, mowing lawns for charity donations, 100% going to St. Jude's Children's Hospital. Nice. Good for you. That's awesome. Carlos, hello. I'm glad to see you. Thank you for showing up. Ash, hello. I love this. Basically, a dumpster says, so weird you'd be talking about this tonight. I love that. Y'all, I hope what basically a dumpster just said, I just printed out flyers, mowing lawns for charity donations, 100% profit going to St. Jude's Hospital. What a beautiful example of using our gifts. And if you don't mind, I would love to hear, if you're up for it, was that something that felt vulnerable for you? Was there a little bit of fear? Was there something that made you feel reticent to do that? Because I do find, y'all, if we aren't confident in who we are, if we don't know our identity, so there's kind of like 3 W's: knowing who we are, knowing whose we are, and why we're here. Knowing those 3 things and really truly knowing it, like at a molecular level, then it kind of is like, man, okay, I'm good. I know who I am. Now let me go serve. The goal of knowing is love. It's not to just end with that. Boundaries and all these self-help terms aren't intended to keep us small and keep us insular, but rather to extend outward and to go and love all the more than we ever thought we could before, because now we're filled up. Now we actually have overflow and we've got excess to give away, rather than operating in relationship with other people where we're constantly getting drained and strained and depleted, honestly, of like our own, all that we have. Cable Dog, thanks for joining. I'm glad you're here. There's always a reason, isn't there? Restored. Do you know how to improve the part of your brain that controls communication and memory? I would love to hear. I would love to hear from you if you have some points there. That's such a good question. The earthly man, hello. Goose Hunter says, do you think that the creative invention in the form of natural talents given to us by the Creator is superior to the methods learned of influencing the world around us? It's interesting. You say the methods learned, but specifically the methods learned of influencing the world around us. I feel like there's like 2 parts to this, Goose Hunter. I don't know if I would use the word superior. Of course, it depends on terms, right? What is your meaning when you say superior? But I have found that, man, it's going to probably be more life-giving because it is naturally flowing out of us. So often when we're like, I don't know what I'm good at. It's like, well, what's easy for you? Where do you find joy? Asking those 2 questions so often actually helps us get to know where our natural gifts lie and natural talents lie. Because for other people, it's like, man, how do you get to do that so easy? And it's like, well, it just comes naturally. And usually the thing that comes naturally is something that is pretty life-giving to us. But then to your point about the methods learned of influencing the world around us, man, it depends. I think it really depends on your why. if your mission requires and is predicated upon the ability to influence, then perhaps the ability to learn that capability of influence is so critical then for your mission to be executed. I think that, and to be honest, to your point about, or to even just that phrase, methods learned of influencing the world around us, that always makes me nervous because I don't know. I know there are wonderful salespeople. Some of my favorite humans are salespeople. And I've always just felt a little like leery of people who know how to do the selling thing and how to manipulate. That makes me nervous. And I know that it's a powerful tool. And so if everybody who knows how to influence people are all just simply trying to get to a certain means or an end, and the people who are really good-hearted and have a mission and an impact don't learn that, we're going to live in a very lopsided world, which I think we see some of the impact of that now. So perhaps to your point then, there's just so many different angles to this whole question, which I love. You always ask the best questions. And so I wouldn't want to give one pat answer, yes or no. I don't think it's a black and white, but I think it's very nuanced discussion. And I do think learning the methods learned of influencing the world around us, I think that's incredibly important, that we know how to even just listen, because in so doing, then we can be heard. So if we want to be heard for the sake of the thing which is in our hearts, we probably should learn that method. Good. Thank you for that question. That was so good. Oh my gosh. Basically a dumpster is, oh my gosh, I love how vulnerable this is. So basically a dumpster said that he also, can you tell me your name? I feel weird calling you basically a dumpster. He said that he printed out flyers about free mowing services, and all proceeds are going to St. Jude's. So kudos to this friend who's literally embodying exactly what we're talking about tonight. And then I said, did it make you feel nervous? And he said, I'm terrified about it failing again, but I have to try. I was given an able body. These kids weren't. Man, if you have like I've never done this before, but if you have a GoFundMe or something, do let us know, because I know there are probably people listening tonight that would want to support you in that. I'm so grateful. When you really think like that woman that I read about her kids losing both parents a couple days ago, I just can't, those children, God bless them. So I'm just so glad you're doing that. C. Martin Love, hello. I'm glad you're here. Hack, hello. Good to see you. Thank you for joining. I love your photo, by the way. Stoop, good to see you. Mir May, hello. Thank you for joining. Matt, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for your message. Thank you so much, Matt Guffey. Mir Mra, hello from Turkey. My sister and I would love to visit Turkey. Maybe one day. There's such beautiful parts of it. C. Martin Love says, all change comes from deepening your understanding of the salvation of Christ and living out the changes that understanding creates in your heart. I love that note about living out the changes that understanding creates in your heart. Isn't that so powerful, y'all? When we start actually sharing what has been revealed to us, the Latin root of intuition is intuere, which means to be taught from within. And so that's exactly what C. Martin Love is talking about here is, are we actually first even taking the time to listen, to be taught from within, to then have something, talk about creation, something of origin to share. That's been revealed to you. That is a unique message, a unique revelation that now you get to share with the world around you. And it could be by way of a gift. Maybe you just have this unique way of letting people feel seen and letting people feel known and shining a light on people. And man, that is something to emphasize and to shine boldly and brightly and to share with the world. And maybe you have another thing that's to be written and given away in book form. Who knows? But you have something that nobody else does, because no one else has your unique combination of soul and life experience and access to God. Nobody else has those three things together. And so in essence, it makes you of vital importance. Buried, hello. Nature, thanks for joining. 363, hello. Thanks for coming on here. I'm glad to see you. Guy that comments, hi. I think a portion of people are not afraid of their gifts, but mainly they're afraid of revealing their hidden gifts. Also, who doesn't like a surprise gift? What an interesting. So they're not afraid of their gifts, but they're afraid of revealing them. Guy that comments, I would love to hear about the why there in terms of, what have you found that has, like, why would you say people are afraid? Because I actually think you're absolutely right. And what you just said resonates with me a lot. I have actually experienced that a lot. I feel almost like deeply terrified at various points in my life that I will be judged and I will lose connection with people I love, and I will effectively be punished for being who I was created to be, and that I will lose out on relationships in my life because of that. There was actually a story I was reading it was probably a year ago, and I just found it, and basically the person was kind of writing a prayer to God, and they were like, God, why did you give me these gifts? Because it only is ostracizing me from people I love. And it was basically he was telling people the truth. He felt like he had this burden that he had to speak out the truth about what's going on and how people are not living rightly, and just being faithful to share the truth. But in that calling that he had, he ended up making a lot of people unhappy because people would rather not know the truth. Harry Truman, what's the quote? He says, I'm gonna read it. Here we go. I want to read this verbatim because it was so potent. He said, I never did give them hell. I just told the truth and they thought it was hell. So to that point, if you have a gift of maybe justice, or you have a gift of advocacy, or you have a gift of telling the truth, people aren't going to be happy about that. And so are we brave enough? So to that point, are we brave enough to know the truth? And then are we brave enough to actually live accordingly and let people know? It's kind of like, stop hiding our light. Are we brave enough to stop hiding? Because I just, guy that comments, I think you just nailed it in that way. Yes, Restore says you can be an honest salesperson, though. You don't have to manipulate. I'm glad you said that. Some people I really, really love are salespeople, so I know that. And, I think it really challenges me. I have a lot of, I know of a lot of people who have a lot of influence, and they're not using it honestly. And so how much easier is it for me to sit in the shadows and point and be the man on the outside of the arena who points and sneers? Theodore Roosevelt talks about, man, this is so interesting. I've never thought about from this way. So Restored, thank you. Roosevelt has this speech from 1914 in Paris. It's called Citizens in the Republic. And he talks about the man in the arena. And then he talks about the critic on the sidelines who points and sneers. And he says, it's not the man, it's not the critic who counts, it's the man in the arena. Well, here's the thing that's interesting. You can still have people in the arena who are not operating with truth and justice and love and responsibility as their guiding compass. But man, they're doing the work. They're putting in the reps. Or you could be somebody who goes and does the thing where it is taking up space. It is standing in the limelight. It is being a salesperson. It is doing the thing that actually is necessary to conquer and even just have at least an equal playing field with all those other folks that maybe don't have good intent. So Restored, I'm so grateful you brought that up, because yes, I completely agree with you. Buried, hello. Callow, hello. Thank you. Thanks for joining. Robert, I don't know if I can answer that. Shadow, hello. I love that. Robert James says, how do I get a girlfriend? And Shadow says, lower your standards. That is one way. I guess the question is, what is your goal in having a girlfriend? Mick Samwell, hello. I love that. Basically a dumpster. That's so good. Smoking Cool says we live in a lopsided world. Jen, hello. Thanks for joining. Oh, wow. Mick Samwell says gifts. Yeah, my parents didn't believe in my gifts, so I kind of just became stoic and kept to myself. Wow. Man, I feel that feel it in my stomach. That's so devastating. Do you mind sharing with us what your gifts are? I'd love to know. And frankly, I just, man, maybe tonight's the night that that we start encouraging you to live out your gifts if you haven't had anybody else do that. It is wild, y'all. It really does make a difference. The way in which we engage with our gifts, the manner in which we extend and operate horizontally so often is predicated in those internal beliefs. And our internal beliefs were often formed in those core moments with our caretakers. So depending on how our caretakers believed in us, treated us, talked about us, talked to us, how they physically engaged with us, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually, all of those things, they show up in the way that we live as adults. Unless we have intentionally undone it or completely given ourselves a new target, that has all of the subconscious power. That's our operating system, unless we create something new. So to your full circle moment, unless we create something new, we're going to be living by default. We're going to be living in reaction and in response to the past. I just quickly, before we keep going, I want to make sure that I do this because yesterday I did not. Our Course in Miracles lesson for today. We're in a review section. We're reviewing lesson 186. Also, it is day 206 of the year, which is crazy. The lesson today actually has so much to do with today's topic. The review is, salvation of the world depends on me. I am entrusted with the gifts of God because I am his son, and I would give his gifts where he intended them to be. So y'all, as we're asking this question of why am I afraid to use my gifts? We asked initially, do we even know what they are? And then kind of how to uncover them. But then there's this other question of, okay, well, what are, examining how I was raised to even think about myself. What are my core beliefs about me? So do I know my gifts? What do I believe about me? And then do I even know, have I even listened? Have I even considered what is the ideal and highest vision for how this could be executed, for how these could be employed, or I guess deployed throughout the world, throughout just my community even, or just in my immediate circle? What does it look like for me to truly step in the light with courage, to go into the arena like Theodore Roosevelt talks about? And your arena is going to look vastly different than mine, and from Mick Samwell's, and from Man in the Hat, and from Brian, and from Brian J. They're all going to look so different. And so do we know those things? What are my gifts? What are the core beliefs that could very well be getting in my way? And then do I even know what it might even look like for them to be lived out? For how, the lesson today says, how God might intend for them to be used. Because here's the thing. What God intends is likely going to be a much higher and bigger and better dream and greater dream than you and I could ever dream. When we think about Martin Luther King Jr. saying, I have a dream, I actually think that was given to him. It's that's the word of a dream, is you're sleeping, it's your subconscious and you have a dream. It's not really something necessarily that you conjure up. So that concept of sitting and listening and receiving a vision that is bigger than ourselves, then it's okay, well, how am I going to deploy my gifts? If I'm brave enough and willing enough, Am I taking the time to listen enough to know what execution may look like? Just jumping back here in the chat. Oh, Enoch Powell. I've never heard of him. I'm gonna look that up. Thank you. Fran, hello. Good to see you. Muse, let's talk about the meaning of life. I actually would love, I'm taking these notes down. I'm going to go ahead and make our show. I'm going to be on tomorrow morning, by the way, at 8 a.m. Pacific, 11 a.m. Eastern. And I'm actually going to talk about these two things. Muse, what you said, what is the meaning of life? And then Goose Hunter, you said, we know that the process of creation and impact is laborious and time consuming. Where do you find the optimal area where you can revitalize weakened tools of influence? Interesting. You always ask interesting questions. Y'all, let's talk about that tomorrow. I'm super excited. I am going to just continue looking through this chat really fast before I jump off. No, Dumpster, I'm so glad. I'm so glad that you shared this. Thank you so much. And Brian says it boils down to 3 pillars. Also, shout out to Brian. He has been our moderator for the last couple of weeks, and I'm just so grateful for you, Brian. And I owe you a book. I was traveling for the last 3 weeks, and I'm back now, and I've got it sitting right over there. It boils down to 3 pillars: living a life that matters to others, feeling that your story makes sense, and pursuing goals that bring you fulfillment. I love that. I love that. Y'all, thank you so much for joining tonight. I loved this chat. This is why I'm so grateful for Brian, because it does kind of keep our chat pure. I'm so grateful for each one of you. Thank you guys so much for joining. I will be back on tomorrow morning, 11 a.m. Eastern, 8 a.m. Pacific, and I will see you then. In the meantime, have